Hello, this is Chapter 15, Spreadsheet Modeling. Our learning objectives today are there they are. Understand the key concepts related to spreadsheet modeling. Construct the influence diagram for spreadsheet modeling. Perform what-if analysis on spreadsheet models. Avoid and detect spreadsheet model errors. A recent study found that the median retirement account balance of all working-age Americans is zero, suggesting that more than half of all Americans have nothing saved for their golden years. While more than 50% of working Americans have access to tax-deferred retirement plans such as a 401k, only 40% participate in such plans. Retirement saving for young people is especially difficult given their record-high student loan debts. Claire Wong is a graduating senior who is currently in the job market searching for her first full-time job. She learned from a personal finance class about how compound interest can make a huge difference to those who invest over a long period of time, and that building a substantial nest egg becomes significantly harder if you start late. Claire is committed to saving for her retirement as soon as she gets her first job and plans to consistently increase her retirement contributions throughout her career. She hopes to accumulate a generous retirement account after a 30-year career. Therefore, in addition to salary, Claire also takes into account the retirement benefits when comparing job offers. Claire wants to develop a spreadsheet model to, number one, predict her retirement savings over 30 years of disciplined contributions to the retirement account. Number two, understand the impact of the size of her contributions, investment returns, employee match, it should actually be employer match, and years of investment on the nest egg. Spreadsheet modeling is the most popular decision support tool used by managers. Spreadsheet modeling is the use of spreadsheet programs, for example, Microsoft Excel, to implement decision models. A decision model is the generalization of the relationships between inputs and outputs of a decision. It's designed to predict outputs and outcomes based on the model inputs, expresses the relationships between inputs and output through mathematical and logical functions. It also allows a manager to change inputs. The spreadsheet model performs recalculations to estimate new outputs, and it allows managers to conduct what-if analysis. There are two types of decision models, deterministic and stochastic models. In a deterministic model, all model parameters are known with certainty. Output is fully determined by the model parameters, often represented by mathematical formulas, and allow us to understand how each input variable affects the output. A stochastic model incorporates some randomness in the model. It will produce different outputs even with the same inputs, and allows the user to take uncertainty into account. Evaluate decisions that may produce a range of possible outcomes, and includes both a deterministic and a random error component. There are three primary components in a decision model: outputs, inputs, and processes. The target outputs are the outcome values of a decision that we wish to know. The model inputs are input variables. It includes both controllable and uncontrollable input variables, and it's sometimes referred to as assumptions. It's intended to be manipulated to affect the target outputs. The processes are the intermediate or final calculations that link the inputs with outputs of the decision model. Key building blocks of the decision model, and it also embeds the assumptions and rules of the business. And it's also mathematical and logical formulas. Using formulas and functions involves an understanding of spreadsheet syntax. Crafting a well-structured spreadsheet requires critical thinking and creativity. Build a spreadsheet model to represent simplified reality. Solve a business problem, performing data analysis, gain insightful information. A good spreadsheet model empowers users with the knowledge to improve its effectiveness. It's easily experiment with different assumptions. You can evaluate and compare different scenarios, and it also helps improve decision making. There are principles to constructing a spreadsheet model, and the spreadsheet model should be well organized. Similar information should be grouped together and clearly labeled and use the same format. The spreadsheet model should also allow users to experiment with different scenarios that are based on input variables and stored in individual cells and separately from the data. Carefully consider formulas so that the formula can be copied to other cells that require a similar calculation. Output, including charts, should be clearly labeled. It should be also appropriately formatted and should be able to easily identify and understand the results. Example, Sarah Washington, a manager at Iniesta Consulting Group, oversees a team of business consultants. Sarah wants to examine the after-tax earnings of her team members to ensure that their salary remains competitive compared to the salaries offered by competing firms. Iniesta offers each employee medical benefits, but each employee is required to pay a co-premium, which is a portion of the medical insurance cost. The annual co-premium amount differs between a management employee, which is $1,800, and a non-management employee, which is $1,250. Even though Iniesta's medical benefits are much better than those offered by other employers, the co-premium reduces an employee's net earnings. This is the example continued. So Sarah collects the salary information of her team members and income tax rates in an Excel spreadsheet. She includes her own information in the table in order to verify the accuracy of her results. Develop a spreadsheet model to help Sarah analyze the salary, income, tax, co-premium, and net earnings of each employee. Example continued. Sarah's spreadsheet organizes the 5 employees into a table with each column containing similar information. Each row is a simplified model representing an employee. All columns are clearly labeled with column headings and appropriately formatted. The input variables are stored in separate cells below the data. This way, if Sarah wants to experiment with different scenarios, she can simply change the value in these individual cells. Here's the example continued. The employee ID, these are the 5. Their last name, their job, their salary, premium, the tax amount, the net earnings, and net earnings as a percent of the salary. Spreadsheet engineering and an influence diagram. Spreadsheet engineering is the process of designing, constructing, and testing spreadsheet models. Due to the ease of use of spreadsheet software, business professionals are often tempted to jump right into the spreadsheet modeling project by entering formulas into the spreadsheet. This approach often leads to critical design flaws or bugs. It requires even more time and effort to fix in the future. Yields flawed decision-making if not detected. Careful planning and design can improve both the speed and quality. A decision can be decomposed into its components. This process allows even very complex decisions to be precisely specified and understood. An influence diagram is a visual tool to illustrate the various components of a decision and their relationships. It's a visual representation, and it represents a conceptual model of the business problem. It also shows the logic behind the decision model. And lastly, it's useful in understanding the relationships between inputs and outputs. 2 key elements of an influence diagram are nodes, shown as ovals, and arrows. The nodes represent the decision variables. The arrows represent the influence that variables have on other variables. An influence diagram starts with the final target output variable at the top, then continuously decomposes the decision to show how the intermediate output variables are influenced by input variables at each level. Use the following steps to create an influence diagram. Number 1, start with the target output. Identify the variables that directly influence the value of the target output. Ideally, each variable is independent of other variables. Number 2, decompose each variable by identifying additional variables that you need to compute it. Continue this process until all influencing variables can no longer be decomposed. Each variable should only appear in the influence diagram once. Number 3, document the intermediate calculations needed as you decompose the target output and intermediate variables. And 4, make incremental improvements to the influence diagram. A well-constructed influence diagram simplifies the spreadsheet model building process and helps avoid errors as the model gets complicated. The diagram documents the logic and assumptions behind the spreadsheet model, making it easy for other users to understand the decision process. The influence diagram is an important tool for spreadsheet model building, auditing, and training. Once the spreadsheet model is constructed based on the influence diagram, incremental improvements can be made to improve the model's accuracy and tenability. Example, recall the introductory case. Claire Wong is interested in constructing a spreadsheet model that would help her predict retirement savings over a 30-year career with disciplined contributions to her retirement account. Create an influence diagram to illustrate the relationships between the input variables and the target outputs. Convert the influence diagram into a spreadsheet model using the following assumptions. Claire will begin her career with a starting annual salary of $50,000. She will receive her first paycheck at the end of January in the first year, and there will be no interruption in her employment during the 30-year period. Claire will receive a constant salary increase, 3%, make a constant contribution of 10% of her salary, receive a constant match of 4% of her salary from the employer, and make a constant 6% return on her investments annually. Assume that all contributions will be made at the beginning of the year. Improve the spreadsheet model by changing the annual contributions and company matches to monthly contributions and company matches that are made at the end of each month, assuming equal monthly investment returns. And here you have the nodes and the arrows. Example continued. The balance for the current year equals principal plus returns. The principal equals the balance from the prior year plus the contribution plus the company. Match returns equal principal times return rate. And the contribution equals the current year salary times the contribution rate, not RAT. Company match is the salary of the current year times the match rate. And the salary of the current year equals salary of the prior year times increase rate. Got that? Makes sense? I think so. Here's the example continued, the spreadsheet with the facts and figures up here, the rate increase, the savings rate, company match, return, etc. Modify the formula for computing the investment returns. And then you have right here, this is 6%, so you want to change that. And you go through the year. Return that. Here we go. What-if analysis. Spreadsheet models and business decisions are often based on assumptions about input variables. Sensitivity analysis helps the decision maker estimate how the target outputs of the model would change if one or more input variables are changed. A crucial part of decision making this is, especially with multiple input variables, both controllable and uncontrollable. Relationships between the variables are intertwined and complex. The technique allows the decision maker to ask the what-if questions about possible alternative futures. It is often referred to as what-if analysis. We consider 3 types: data table, goal seek, and scenario manager. A data table shows how the calculated results change if 1 or 2 input variables change within a range of possible values. A one-way data table allows you to determine the sensitivity of the output variable to a range of values of a single input variable. Example, return on invested capital versus inventory. A two-way data table lets you change input variables at 2 input variables at a time. Example, the combined effect of down payment and interest rate on the monthly mortgage rate, or monthly mortgage payment, excuse me. What-if analysis continued. Example, After creating the spreadsheet model to predict her retirement savings over 30 years, Claire wants to see how different savings rates, ranging from 6% to 15% with 1% increments, would change the retirement savings at the end of the 30-year period. She also learned that different asset allocation strategies would lead to different returns on investments. A bigger allocation to riskier assets tends to generate higher average returns over the long run, and vice versa. Claire is curious about how different contribution rates combined with different projected returns, ranging from 5 to 10% with 1% increments, would change her retirement savings. So here's the example. Continued, you open the retirement calculator. What if analysis? Here's your data table with the different savings rates. Big difference. What if analysis. Excel's goal seek is the what if analysis that can determine the exact value of the input variable to achieve a desired outcome. Example, if your monthly budget allows you to spend $250 on a car payment, you can use goal seek to find out the exact price of a vehicle that you can afford. In other words, goal seek allows you to set a desired outcome or goal by experimenting with one input variable at a time. Goal seek works backward to identify the exact value for an input variable to reach the desired outcome. Example, inspired by the FIRE, which is the Financial Independence Retire Early movement, which advocates achieving early retirement through aggressive saving and investment, Claire is rethinking her retirement timeline. She is curious to find out if it is possible to have a nest egg of $1.5 million after working for 20 years if she saves diligently and invests in assets that would have an average annual return of 10%. If it is possible, what savings rate would help Claire achieve this goal? Managers may want to understand the combined effect of multiple input variables on an output variable. Scenario Manager allows you to create and compare up to 32 possible scenarios based on multiple input variables. You can use Scenario Manager to create a summary report that shows both the input values stored in each scenario and the results. By comparing these scenarios, the business owner can assess the risk associated with the company's expansion plan if one of these scenarios materializes in the future. Example, after the first round of interviews with companies, Claire has received job offers from 3 companies that she is interested in working for. The first offer is from a national healthcare company located in the city Claire lives in. It offers an annual salary of $60,000 and a 3.5 company match on retirement savings. Historical salary data show that employees of the company tend to receive a stable salary increase of 3% each year. Due to the relatively low cost of living in the college town where Claire lives, Claire projects that she will be able to save an extra 5% of her salary for retirement, bumping her savings rate to 15%. The second offer comes from a small startup company that is located in a metropolitan area. While the starting salary of $48,000 is lower than what Claire expected, the company shows great growth potential and will likely increase employee salaries at a faster pace, around 5%. In addition, the company boasts excellent benefits, including a 5% company match on retirement savings. Finally, the third offer is from a global consulting company in a metro area. The company offers a salary of $65K and an average of 4% annual salary increases. However, the company only offers 2% match for retirement savings. Faced with these choices, Claire wants to understand how accepting these job offers would impact her retirement savings after 10, 20, and 30 years. Use Scenario Manager to help Claire evaluate these scenarios. Example continued, you open up the retirement calendar in Excel, and you begin to plug in your formulas and your facts and your data. Here it is. Example continued. Avoiding and detecting errors in spreadsheet models. A spreadsheet model tends to evolve over time. As managers compare the estimates from the model with reality, they make adjustments to improve the model's accuracy in making future predictions. As the spreadsheet model becomes more complex and is modified by other people, the possibility of introducing errors to the model also increases. Spreadsheet errors are widespread and costly to businesses. One study even shows that 50% of all spreadsheet models used in large organizations are defective. One common error in spreadsheet models is circular reference. This means that a formula refers back to its own cell, either directly or indirectly. In some situations, circular reference is necessary and legitimate. When the formula is logically correct, enable Excel to resolve the circular reference issue. Click File, Options to open the Excel Options dialog box, and then choose the Formulas tag and check the box next to Enable Iterative Calculation, and then click OK. Another common spreadsheet model error is using a relative cell reference when an absolute or mixed cell reference should be used. When you copy a formula from one cell to another, Excel treats the cell references in your formula as relative by default. To fix this problem, use absolute cell references, for example, $C, $5. The references to these cells remains consistent no matter to which cell the formulas are copied. Here's an example. Sarah Washington notices that users of her spreadsheet model for analyzing employee salaries, income taxes, co-premiums, and net earnings tend to enter invalid salary data by inputting one digit too many or too few. She knows that the current salary range is from $40,000 to $150,000. She also notices that users sometimes misspell or enter terms other than management and non-management in the job classification column, which causes the model to enter the incorrect co-premium amount. Help Sarah prevent these user entry errors. Example continued in Excel. Let's move on. Excel offers a number of features that help you audit the validity of formulas in spreadsheet models. These features can be found in the Formula Audit group of the Formulas menu. Trace precedence allows you to identify cells that contain data that are part of the formula in the active cell. Trace dependence, on the other hand, allows you to identify cells whose values are affected by the active cell. Show formulas allows you to inspect all the formulas in the spreadsheet model at the same time. Finally, the Watch Window tool lets you monitor the values of selected cells from any workbook. Example. After a computer hardware failure, Sarah Washington was only able to recover some of her files. She was able to find an earlier version of the spreadsheet model for analyzing employee salaries, income taxes, co-premiums, and net earnings, which contains multiple errors. Help Sarah fix the errors in the spreadsheet model using Excel's formula auditing tools. Here's an example here as well. And then the Excel continued evaluating the formula. And example continued, all the formulas are shown. And the watch window. I thank you for listening.